Good morning, Illini. Welcome back to Healthy Illini Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Matt Schrock, and we're glad you're here with us. Welcome. We are in the heat of summer if you're here in Illinois, that's for sure. But we're glad you're tuning into this program, and I'm excited to have the conversation today. I'm joined by a frequent guest of the program. If you look back over our archive, you can see where he's spoken a number of times, but Todd Johnson is with us. Todd is an advanced practice nurse here at McKinley Health Center. Todd, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Matt. Good to be here.
As I said, summer is upon us, and the heat is here, this week in particular. But with the summer months brings a lot of opportunity to be outdoors and do a lot of outdoor activities. But we also know that means lots of opportunities to be interacting with bugs. No matter what you're doing outside, it is important to be prepared and to be safe. We talk about food safety. We talk about, sun safety. Today, we're going to talk about bug safety and how to protect yourself from insects and things like that. So while there are a lot of varieties of insects, they aren't out there to get you. But there are some important ones to be aware of because they do pose some risk and some issues for the people that are enjoying outdoor activities. So Todd, if you just start there, what are some of the important insects to be aware of?
Well, I mean, obviously there's lots of bugs out there, right? Whether they're six-legged bugs or spiders or whatever the case may be. But really the ones that are out to get you that we're worried about most commonly were the most annoying ones, are the mosquitoes, the flies, the gnats, the no-see-ums. Those are the ones that bite you and want to draw some blood. So they're no fun. Ticks also in there with them too. Not necessarily insects. They're more of the mite spider family. But they're also out to get you, right? Outside of those guys, we got spiders that really aren't out to get you, and if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. And for the most part, they're not going to bite you. We don't have a ton of biting spiders around here, but sometimes they will, and that can cause some problems. Of course, we got bees. Bees, if you leave them alone, they pretty much leave you alone, or at least that's the way you think it would work, but sometimes it seems like they chase you around. And we get bees and wasps and yellow jackets. This is the time of year that, you get your yellow jackets that love the garbage cans, and they'll find their way to you. But we've got some lesser-known critters out there that as the weather gets warmer, they start working their way out. These would be your centipedes, multi-legged creatures. Typically, those things are going to scurry away from you if you lift up a box when you're moving stuff in the garage or something like that. But those guys can bite. They can make you feel things. Ants, this seems to be a really bad year for ants, especially those little tiny red ones that seem to get into everything. So you got to watch for those. Sometimes those little guys can bite as well. Kissing bugs or assassin bugs, triatone bugs by name. Pretty distinct looking things. If you ever look at a kissing bug, look it up online, Google it. They can leave a pretty bad bite mark too. They call them a kissing bug for a reason, because when they bite you, you get a big red circle that looks like a good old-fashioned hickey.
So that kind of actually leads into the next thing I wanted to ask about that, because we talked about the different kinds of bugs and was there, but you're talking about all these things that bite or sting. Is there varying levels of risk? Is there varying levels of concern for some of these bites? If you would, to talk about what are the dangers of getting bit by some of these insects?
So a lot of it depends on what the bug is, right? Typically mosquitoes, flies, gnats, no-see-ums, they're more nuisance things. And unless you have a specific allergy, some people react really badly to mosquito bites and things, and they get big welts and stuff. Just some localized itching, and pretty much that could be managed with keeping the area clean, maybe use a topical hydrocortisone or something like that on it. When we get into ticks, then we're talking about things where they can carry diseases. Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Everybody's always worried about Lyme disease with ticks and stuff like that. But there are a number of tick-borne illnesses. Fortunately, if we know you've had a tick bite, if we can identify the tick, that's really helpful. But at the same time, we pretty much have in our arsenal an antibiotic we can give you right away with the tick bite if we feel that you're at risk for something. We also have tests that we can do to test for specific tick-borne illnesses if we need to, like Lyme disease.
Let's say somebody does get well, we'll come back to the minute. Actually, we're going to move there in a second. Before we get to that point, so we have these different types of insects. We have different types of bites here. I mean, we know protection and prevention, whether it's in anything we're doing outside, that's important.
Yep.
And it comes in insects is the same thing. So what are your suggestions for the best tips for protection, and is there different strategies for different bugs or different areas?
Sure. A lot of it really depends on where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing, right? If you're outside at dusk when mosquitoes are more active, make sure that you got bug spray on. Protect yourself from getting bit. There are some diseases you can get from mosquito bites. West Nile disease can be passed on. It's not very common, but it can be passed on. Throughout the world, we fight yellow fever, malaria, and dengue, which are mosquito-vectored illnesses, and those are actually becoming more commonly seen in some of our southern states. So it is important, if you're going to be out in the times when mosquitoes are most active at dusk and dawn, that you be using some bug spray, a repellent to keep them off of you, wearing long sleeves or long pants, a hat, things like that. The thing you're looking for in bug spray, you want to make sure that it's got plenty of DEET, D-E-E-T. Anywhere from like 25 to 40% is usually enough to keep the bugs away. And there's some people that they just never get bit, and some people they get bit all the time. People are like, diabetics get bit more often because there's more sugar in their blood. There's no science to that at all. It's just, I think part of it is just your natural hormones and pheromones you produce. Some people just attract more mosquitoes. We just like to say they're sweeter.
And that difference can even be within a family.
Yeah.
Like my kids, my middle son can be outside and be fine. My daughter, she is a buffet for any mosquitoes that are around.
And a lot of times it's not that they're not getting bit as much, it's just that they don't react the same way. They don't have the same reaction to the bite, so they don't notice it.
And you mentioned the long clothes. That's really important for like hikes and like tall grass and things like that when we're talking ticks and things like that.
We were down southern Illinois at Guard of the Gods this past weekend, and my wife was like, got to wear a hat. She's ducking under trees and stuff. And I'm like, ticks are not hanging on trees watching for you to come and dive bomb you. That's not how they work. They are just hanging out on branches of bushes and tall grass, and when you walk by, they latch on, right? So they don't make that jump.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about those. But if you are walking through tall grasses, or if you've got a pet and they're out with you in the woods or whatever, they can latch on to your pet, and then their pet can bring them home, and then they climb off your pet and decide to climb on you. So
and like you say, you don't have to be like fearful of it all, but it's important to check. When you're done with those during those hikes, and especially if you're in like the tall grass areas or the trees and things like that, periodically just check and see if
I know it's not real comfortable to wear long pants and a long sleeve shirt when you're out hiking in the woods because it's 94 degrees out and stuff. But there are, you can buy hiking clothing that wicks moisture away pretty well and breathes really well. They've got UV long sleeve shirts that guys use for fishing and stuff like that are really good to wear when you're out walking in the woods and things like that. And a lot of it, if you're walking on established trails, you're probably not as high a risk as if you're going on, a little deeper in the woods, so to speak.
You're foraging, basically.
Yeah, so it's a good idea when you get out of those areas to check right away. Run your fingers through your hair. It's just like you're massaging your scalp when you're washing your hair. See if you feel anything in there. Pull it off if you do, if it's loose. If you do find a tick lodged onto you or that has bit you and has hooked on, do what you can to get it off as soon as possible. The shorter the time it's attached to you, the less likelihood it is that it can pass on the diseases.
And we'll talk about that, how to do that in a minute. But you mentioned something else that I want to really bring up that you'd put in the prep work that I was like, well, that makes sense. I hadn't even thought about it. It's important to do the same thing for your pets, to have the topical meds, to have the prevention on your pets too, because if they're going to be outside, they're just as much of a risk as you are of running into insects. And so that's something just to remember, that while you're protecting yourself, protect your pets at the same time.
Yeah, the meds we use for cats and dogs when they're outside, they're taking their heartworm meds because if they get bit by mosquitoes, they can develop heartworm, and nobody wants to lose their furry best friend that way. But a lot of them now include coverage that helps kill fleas and ticks, so that if a tick were to latch on and decide to take a bite and start, drawing some blood, it'll kill them and they'll drop off. So, that's a pretty useful thing because ticks are really bad this year. I was at our groomer last week, and she said almost every dog they've had in has had at least 1 or 2 ticks on it.
Really?
And I mean, that's for people that, the dog just runs around the backyard
Right.
and stuff. They're not taking them, out deep into the woods. These aren't hunting dogs or anything like that.
Right.
These are your good old fashioned doodles that are just there for a trim and a bath, right?
The last thing as far as prevention that you'd mentioned was bees and wasps, excuse me. And you were talking about garbage areas. And so would you touch on that a little bit, like the importance of being aware?
So, well, a lot of people call yellow jackets. They're not actually bees. They're a type of wasp, right? And you see them every year. When it starts getting warm, they love being around the garbage dumpsters, the garbage cans. They'll nest in places so that they can have access to those things. We see them at picnics, starting Memorial Day weekend all the way through Labor Day, football tailgates. They love empty soda cans, that kind of stuff. And these guys, they'll sting you multiple times. They are a wasp. Wasps can sting multiple times. They don't drop their stinger, and they'll just keep hitting you. And if you disrupt the hive, they'll all come after you and do it. So it's a good idea to keep garbage contained in something where it does close the lid off. Even if you're just sitting at a picnic table and you got a can of soda, keep a cover on that can of soda.
Yep.
Because those guys can get in there. And I don't know if you've ever been stung on the lip by a wasp. It is not fun when that happens.
Not at all. So as we're talking about bee stings, there are people that are allergic to it, and they're aware that they're allergic to it.
Usually,
and so there's specific prevention or protection for them. Would you share about that a little bit?
Those people, if they already know they're allergic to bee stings, they probably have with them or have access to an EpiPen. It is really important at this time of year you make sure that your EpiPen is current. There are 2 types of medicines that if you have expired medicines, it's a no-go. Most expired medicine is good for, a couple months after the expiration date. EpiPens and rescue inhalers for asthma. Anything past their expiration date, you want to get a new one. So check with your provider or here at McKinley. If you have a bee sting allergy or a wasp sting allergy, make sure you get an EpiPen.
So we've talked about the kinds of insects. We've talked about the prevention and protection, but you might get stung, you might get bit, and there's a good chance of that happening at some point during the summer. So let's move on to it's happened, right? First question is it important to know, like when you look at a bite, is there something you're looking for that, this is just something simple, or this is something more serious? Like what are you looking for?
So a bite or sting, sometimes it's really hard to tell just by looking at it what got you, right? The thing that is going to help us most is if you saw it. If it was a fly or it was a mosquito, or if you saw a spider or a centipede on your leg, they're all going to cause a red inflamed area, some swelling to that area, and there will be a central bite mark or sting mark where the skin gets broken. Okay. If it's a bee, or something of the bee family, those generally drop their stinger. They sting once, and then if they drop their stinger, they go die. But they leave that behind, and attached to that stinger is a venom sac. So we need to be really careful in removing a venom sac so that we don't squeeze it and inject more venom and cause a more painful sting. So the best way to do that, we call it the credit card method, where you just take a credit card, your driver's license, something with a good sharp edge to it, right? And you kind of run it along the edge of your skin, pushing against that stinger to pull it out. And then that way, if you try to grab the stinger, you'll squeeze the venom bag and empty it out. If you push that card against the venom bag, it'll pull the stinger out without releasing the venom into the wound.
So that was something that I'd never heard in my 46 years or whatever. I'd never heard that one. So
credit cards also handy for scraping your windows in a pinch, but that's a wintertime.
They're great for a lot of things. But from a medicinal side, insect bites, bee stings. Is there anything, topical ointments or like is there a recommendation on how to treat that sort of thing?
So your response to a bee sting or a bug bite or even a spider bite is an inflammatory response. Your immune system reacts by rushing histamine and mast cells and leukotrienes and all these different cascading things to your immunologic system, which causes the air to get red and swollen and brings moisture and warmth to that area. That kind of helps the process of fighting infection and helps to start healing the wound. But it's uncomfortable, right? And so we use medications to alleviate those symptoms. Antihistamines, Benadryl, Claritin, Zyrtec, something like that, helps reduce itching and redness and swelling. We use steroid creams like hydrocortisone, calamine lotion. That's the old favorite, the pink sticky stuff that dries into a crust. A lot of times with bee stings, just making a kind of a mixture of baking soda and water and putting it on there will help calm things down as well. So really we're treating symptoms in most cases when it comes to bites and stings. In most cases, sometimes if there is an infection, because these things are itchy and you scratch on them for a while, we need to go a little higher. Maybe we need to give you an oral antibiotic for a secondary infection because you scratched yourself to the point that the skin got broken and then some bacteria got in there. Sometimes the reaction is so profound that we can't control it with topical steroids or antihistamines, and we need to hit you with an oral steroid burst, maybe give you a few days of prednisone to kind of tell your immune system to calm down a little bit. But for the bigger problems of the spider bites, if we can see the spider, that's real helpful because if it's
Right.
a black widow or brown recluse, there's a little bit of a different treatment process.
Sure.
And so I don't want everybody that hears this goes, no, I got a spider bite, I got to run to the ER. If you can catch the spider or at least identify what it looks like, give us an idea. That's really helpful to us. Same thing with ticks. Your first impression when you finally pull a tick off of you is flush it, throw it away, right? But if you can find a way to keep it, put it in a plastic baggie with a little alcohol swab, pretty much wipes it out, we can identify what it is, and that'll be helpful to us. Lyme disease, pretty much deer tick driven. So if it's not a deer tick, your likelihood of Lyme disease is much less. But, there's a lot of different ticks in this area, dog ticks, Lone Star ticks. There's all kinds of different ticks that are around this year, and it's a bad tick year.
You had mentioned before that the sooner you can get it off, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a method to getting it off. Would you share a little bit about how to remove a tick?
So back when I was a kid, the thing was to take a lit match, blow it out, and hold it onto the tick, and the tick's going to come out. It doesn't work that way, so don't try that one. And don't use a lighter or anything like that because that's not going to make the tick come out. You'll just burn yourself. Some people have used alcohol, like a alcohol swab, put it over the tick, figure it's going to drive the tick out because you're suffocating it or something like that. That's really not going to make the tick disengage. The best, most efficient way of getting a tick off is to grasp it firmly as close to the skin, to the head as you can with a pair of pointed tweezers. Not your flat tweezers, but
Right.
the pointy ones where you can really get in there and get a good grip on it. And don't yank. Don't turn the tick. There's no clockwise counter. The tick didn't screw in, so you don't have to unscrew it. That's another misnomer, right?
Right.
You just want to apply pressure, pulling that tick out, right? So if the tick is like perpendicular to your skin and the body's sticking straight up, pull straight out. If it's at an angle or running parallel to your skin, try to pull parallel to your skin. So you want to try to pull the direction out that it went in, okay? And slow, steady pressure. And eventually what happens is they'll disengage to try to get away because they're in a bad situation. And at that point, you can go ahead and put them in a baggie or whatever. Wash the area with soap and water. You can apply something to it, as I said, if you have pain or discomfort or itching from that area, and keep an eye on it. The Lyme disease, we're looking for that bullseye rash that tends to be created, circular rash, kind of different colors grading, looks like a bullseye. Outside of that, it might just get a little red or inflamed. If you ever get a bite that starts oozing what we call purulent drainage, purulent's a great word, but anything that looks like pudding, thick, opaque, then you need to come in and see us because that's a sign that something's infected. A little serous drainage that looks like sap or honey, that's normal for stuff to come out like that, okay? But if it starts getting bigger, more swollen, more red, painful, and you get that goopy, gross drainage, that's definitely time to come in and see us for an infection.
You mentioned that with the tick, you can, start with an alcohol wipe and see if you can suffocate it there. Circling back a little bit, you had put in the prep work, but not alcohol wipes for bug bites. So ticks are yes, but bug bites are no. Would you, explain a little bit of that?
So you will get short relief to mosquito bites or fly bites if you use an alcohol wipe on it. But the alcohol wipe also dries out your skin, and it also kind of stunts your body's immune response to preventing an infection and stuff going on there. So you get a few seconds of relief, but in essence, what you're going to do is exacerbate the problem more. So washing it with cool water, applying cold compress to it, those are better things to do to provide relief. The cold alcohol wipe, it feels cool and it feels better because that alcohol evaporates so fast. Right? But it's not going to help you in the long run. It'll actually cause more problem because it's going to dry the skin out.
Well, Todd,
makes it more itchy.
Yeah. Thank you for this has been great information. I mean, we've hit a wide variety of things here, and as we said, in the summer, you have an opportunity to interact with a lot of insects. The last thing I'll say is, if you have questions, call somebody. Ask a doctor's office, call us here at McKinley, ask questions because we can answer some of these and help triage it over the phone a little bit with insect bites, especially. Dilators
is here on Sundays, and that seems like that's the only thing that. On a Sunday, when you come back from the park or wherever, and you're like, I got a tick, what am I supposed to do? Call the Dilators. They can triage your situation.
Absolutely, give a call and ask. But yeah, and there's a lot of opportunities to need this information, and hopefully now you have this information to help you out. So, Todd, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate you coming back on the program and sharing your insights.
Always glad to be here, Matt.
Summer's a great time in Illinois. There's so many activities to do, so many areas to go to, whether it's parks or on the water, on the beach, going through trees in the woods, hiking trails, whatever it may be. There's lots of opportunity to be outside and have a lot of fun, but you're going to interact with insects. And so there's a risk to get bit, to have some of those interactions as well. So we just want you to be protected. So make sure that you are taking the prevention, make sure you're aware of the situations, but you're monitoring looking for any like ticks or bites or anything like that. And if you have questions, contact us here at McKinley or contact your medical provider. We want you to have a safe summer. We want you to enjoy it without too much hindrance and without too much noise from bites and stings. But thank you for joining us today. You're on a personal journey no matter where you are in it. You are important and you matter. Your health and wellness are important and matter, and we're here to keep you well to excel. So go have a great week, Illini. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll catch you next time on Healthy Illini.